Hello again. I received a phone call as I was explaining the last question, so it cut off the video. This is new to me. If any of you want to email me at the CSUN address and give me a more efficient way of doing all this, I'm open to suggestions. Much appreciated. Okay, we were doing question number 9 on page 264. This is the teenager who can work $5 an hour unlimited or $6 an hour with a maximum of 8 hours a day. So it's our budget constraint right here at $6 an hour. You can see it is steeper than the other curve, but becomes completely horizontal at 8 hours. And then you can see the crossover point in terms of earnings would be 9.6 hours, because 9.6 hours at $5 an hour is the same $48 as you earn working 8 hours at the higher wage. Clearly, anyone who's in the section over here who really wanted to work a ton of hours would be worse off. For young people who didn't want to work any more than 8 hours, they're going to be better off clearly with the new rule over there. Okay. Next, question 10. The government wants to provide a subsidy to parents for childcare, but they want to get people to work to get it. So the deal with this is you get $4 an hour boost in your pay as long as you work at least 4 more hours a day. This actually becomes quite easy to show. We're on the bottom here. We've got the initial budget constraint, the usual one that we're familiar with. At 4 hours worked, it shifts up from point C to point D, and that would be $16 because it's $4 an hour for the 4 hours already worked. And thereafter, we have a steeper slope because you're getting $4 an hour more than you were before. So, for example, if you were making $10 an hour, you'd be now making $14 an hour with the child care subsidy if you worked at least 4 hours a day, and then you would get that $16 upfront payment. Again, if you hit the 4-hour threshold. Okay, not too difficult. Alrighty, we're almost home free. The last one is problem number 2 on page 266. And for that one, we've got a situation where you're receiving government assistance, aid to families with dependent children. It's assume the daily subsidy is $40, and you are going to receive that benefit, but lose $1 for every dollar that you earn. Super easy. It's going to be the spike right here, and then a flat budget constraint, because as you earn $1, you're losing $1 of benefits, so that the net effect is going to be 0. And then once we hit 4 hours a day, because the person's making $10 an hour, then we're back to the old budget constraint. So the key thing here is people who work a relatively few hours will drop out of the workforce. That is the problem with a government benefit where you're taxed at 100%. And then we're back to the old budget constraint beyond the 4 hours. So someone who's willing to work a lot of hours, the program may have no impact, but it will encourage people either to drop out of the workforce entirely, and maybe even some who are working more than 4 hours. Okay. On to Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is the one where we deal with compensating wage differentials. We have referred to this a little bit from time to time during the course of the semester, but now we bring it back full circle in a way. So we've spent the first half of the semester dealing with labor demand, labor supply, understanding unemployment. It's done. Now it's all applications. So we're going to deal with compensating wage differentials. Why do different jobs pay different amounts? Then we're going to deal with education, migration, discrimination, etc. And let's just see how far we get along the way to ultimately see whether we're able to cover more chapters or not. My suspicion is we're going to be able to go a little bit faster because these lectures are online. Okay, so here's the deal. Now we're not looking at whether you're going to work and how many hours you're going to work, but rather how you choose an occupation. So we ask the following question. If everybody is equally suited to two firms, how are you going to pick which firm? Okay. And will wages differ? Okay. Let's assume they didn't. Let's assume two companies pay exactly the same, but one is a more desirable place than the other to work. Well, then obviously more people are going to apply for jobs at the company that has a more preferable work environment, and that's going to drill the wages down. Likewise, the other way to think about it is if there's a firm where there are undesirable aspects about the job, they will have to pay more to compensate people for the less desirable working conditions. So where all of this boils down to, and the essence of the compensating wage differential, is that you are paid for hazardous jobs, boring jobs, night shift, things of that nature with a higher wage, but you will buy with a lower wage jobs that are very desirable in every which way. They may be teaching at a college that's in just a beautiful location, and a lot of people derive utility simply from that, so the wages they have to pay to attract people would not be as great. Example that I like to talk about, I don't know whether I mentioned it earlier this semester or not, but it doesn't matter, I'm going to mention it again, is I had a roommate in college who made more money than I did. I worked in the registrar's office at UCLA my senior year. My roommate worked at a mortuary in Hollywood, and he made more money than I did, but he was working the night shift on the weekends. He was in a dingy room upstairs, laying on a couch, watching a black and white TV, and had to answer the door when they were bringing bodies in. And I visited him once, and once was enough. And he made more money, but that was a job that I would not have chosen to undertake. And there are lots of examples of that. So a little while back, it doesn't give me the exact date, but it's probably just no more than a couple years old, a list that I found online of the high-paying dirty jobs. Okay, and let me give you examples, because this will very clearly illustrate what the compensating differential analysis is all about. I will get through some of the basic concepts of what drives all this, and then for the next segment of the lecture for this chapter, we'll get into some of the graphical representations. Okay, examples of jobs that pay relatively well. Crime scene cleaner, okay, $75,000 a year. You have to be able to collect evidence, blood, and things of that nature. A lot of people find that distasteful. Garbage collectors make $60,000 a year, more in larger cities, but again, not the safest in terms of being around potential disease, and obviously a dirty job in and of itself. Oil rig workers, well paid, dangerous because those oil rigs can explode periodically, and dirty work. Porta potty cleaners make $60,000 a year if you're willing to do it. That's more money than you're going to make coming out of college. Crab fishermen, it's not easy work, to be sure, a lot of hours, pays well. Sewage inspector, another example. Coal miners, back in the day when people didn't have a lot of job options, coal miners did not get paid very well, but now that you have a lot more educated people, coal, particularly underground mines, have to pay well, like $65,000 a year, which in mining country would be quite a good operation. Landfill operator, $100,000 a year. One of the things they need to do is when you're burying biological waste that's going to decompose, is you extract the methane gas that's produced, and actually that stuff is resold. I don't expect a lot of you would choose to do that. And we can go on and on and on. Just figure out any kind of job that is really risky. Window washers, in a high rise make way more than window washers working on street level. Again, it is compensating for things that people find distasteful, or you pay a price with the lower wage for job aspects that are considered tasteful. I want to work in the entertainment industry. I want to work for some well-known company because there's a certain prestige associated with that, so they don't have to pay as much for people working in those jobs. Okay, some of the basic assumptions associated with that, and then we'll save for the next segment of the video the actual picture drawing and all of that. So basic assumptions here. People are here to maximize their utility, not their income. That's kind of obvious because no one would take a relatively low paying job in an area that's really desirable, right? So utility is overriding things. Obviously income is important, but it's not the only thing that drives what people do. A lot, not everyone, but a lot of faculty at CSUN could make more money in the private sector, particularly in the business disciplines, but they choose not to do that. Some work on the side, but others who could work full-time on the side obviously could make more money, but they don't do that. So that's number one. Number two, workers are informed generally about the risks associated with the jobs that they are taking. Otherwise, you're unable to price it. One of the issues that comes up when we think about the asbestos litigation that I do is that a lot of workers were unaware that the jobs that they had were risky. And the claim is, in much of this litigation, that the employers did know that it was risky, and the manufacturers of the asbestos products knew that they were risky, but the workers were kind of sitting ducks and all that. And finally, mobility, so that you have a choice not to accept a job in a coal mine, let's say, and you can actually move somewhere else. And therefore, you're not obligated to take a job that is less desirable. You will simply choose to do it if, in fact, the compensation is enough to get you to do it. Okay, that's part one of chapter 8. We'll continue on with part 2 shortly. See you soon.